How does that happen? Seriously, how does someone born on the absolute lowest rung of a rigid social ladder, someone who is denied the most basic human dignity, rise up to write the very soul of a new nation? Well, today, we're diving into one of the most incredible stories of the 20th century. We're going to explore the life of Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar. His journey from social outcast to, literally, a founding father of a country. It just completely redefines what resilience and justice even mean. All right, so let's set the scene. We're in the town of Mo. It's April 14th, 1891. Bhimrao Ambedkar is born the 14th child of a soldier in the Mahar caste, and that meant his family, his entire community, was branded with a deeply painful label.
Now, to really get his story, you have to understand what this word untouchable actually meant. It wasn't just a name, it was basically a life sentence. It meant you were seen as polluting, as unworthy, as totally separate from the rest of society. And that reality, it shaped every single moment of his early life.
So what did that actually look like for him as a kid? Well, at his school in Satara, it was just constant humiliation. I mean, imagine being forced to sit outside the classroom. Imagine not being allowed to drink water from the same pot as your classmates. And yet, somehow, this brutal prejudice, it just couldn't kill his burning desire to learn.
And this is where the story really takes a turn. See, for Ambedkar, education wasn't just about books and getting good grades. No way. It was the only tool he had to break the chains that he was born into. It became his weapon, his shield, his only path to freedom.
And his drive was just unstoppable. In 1907, he becomes one of the very first from his community to even pass the high school entrance exams. Then a scholarship sends him to college in Bombay, and then, in 1913, he crosses oceans to study at Columbia University in New York City, eventually earning a master's and a PhD.
This really says it all, doesn't it? The incredible irony. A man who couldn't even touch the water well in his own village goes on to drink from the deepest wells of international knowledge. He came back to India not just with degrees, but with this absolutely unshakable mission to change everything.
So armed with this world-class education, Ambedkar gets home and he doesn't waste a second. He immediately starts turning all that knowledge into action. This wasn't just his personal struggle anymore. This was the beginning of a revolution for social justice. He kicked off this whole series of strategic, you could say defiant acts. He started newspapers to give a voice to the voiceless. He led a historic march to claim the right for Dalits to drink from a public water tank. He publicly burned ancient texts that were used to justify the caste system. And he fought tooth and nail in the political arena to secure representation for his people.
The Pune Pact. Now this is a really fascinating moment. It was signed at Yerwada jail after this major political showdown with none other than Mahatma Gandhi. It ultimately secured reserved seats in government for the so-called depressed classes. It was definitely a compromise, a really complex and hard-won victory, but it guaranteed a political voice.
Okay, so you've got this lifetime of struggle, of fighting, of brilliant strategy, and it all leads to this, his most monumental role yet. Just as India is about to gain its independence, the man who was once barred from the classroom is asked to write the rulebook for an entire nation.
I mean, his rise was just incredible. He gets elected to the legislature, and then in 1947, when India becomes independent, he's appointed the nation's first ever law minister. In that role, he championed rights for laborers and for women. But his most critical job of all, he was named chairman of the committee that was going to draft India's constitution.
And within that massive foundational legal document, there is one single article that stands as the absolute peak of his life's work.
Article 17. With just a few powerful words, the practice of untouchability was officially abolished and outlawed in India. The man who had lived its sting his entire life now legally dismantled it for every generation to come. It was the ultimate triumph of justice.
So on November 25, 1949, he presents the final draft of the Constitution to Rajendra Prasad, the President of the Assembly. You can just feel the weight of that moment, can't you? This was more than just a document. It was a promise, a blueprint for a more equal society, handed over by the one person who knew more than anyone exactly what was at stake.
But, Ambedkar's story doesn't actually end there. In the final chapter of his life, he made one last, incredibly profound statement, leaving behind a legacy of liberation that continues to inspire millions.
So what's this number all about? On October 14, 1956, tired of the rigid hierarchies within Hinduism, Ambedkar converted to Buddhism in the city of Nagpur. And he was not alone. 500,000 of his followers converted right there with him in a single day. A massive, peaceful rejection of the caste system.
He passed away shortly after, on December 6, 1956. But his legacy? Wow, it is absolutely everywhere. It lives in the very text of the Indian Constitution, in the laws that protect marginalized communities, in the colleges he founded, and in the hearts of social justice activists all over the world.
When you step back and look at it, Ambedkar's life is this powerful, undeniable proof that one person's conviction, their unwavering voice, can literally shatter the chains of a society. And that just leaves us with a question to think about, right? If he could break chains that were centuries old, what injustices around us today are just waiting for a voice?